Good grief, what a busy wrestling weekend that was. Something like 10 hours of original programming if you keep up with AEW and WWE, not to mention the wrestling going on elsewhere in the world. At WrestlePalooza, you've got Brock Lesnar and John Cena. You've got some of the biggest names in the game. You've got AJ Lee wrestling her first match in 10 years. Almost had 10 minutes there, that'd be stupid. You got Cody Rhodes in the main event. You've got a new women's champion in Stephanie Vaquer. And then over here in AEW, earlier in the day, you've got an epic 40-minute main event that people absolutely loved between Kyle Fletcher and Hangman Adam Page. You've got a freeway for the Unified Championship, Mascara Dorada, Kazuchika Okada, Konosuke Takeshita. You've got a surprising new Women's World Champion in the form of Chris Statlander. You've got Jon Moxley and Darby Allin in a brutal, that's a compliment, coffin match as well that's been building for about a year at this stage. The point is, there's a lot going on in wrestling this past weekend. There were a lot of things hogging headlines from other things, and that's why today I want to talk to you about MJF, who, in the midst of all this noise, in the midst of all this chaos, may just have had the best weekend of his entire wrestling career. Now, I'm saying that like he's been doing this for 40 years or something like that. He's a young lad. He's not been doing it 40 years. But on the balance of things, and when you look at what he accomplished in his two big matches this weekend, let's count Friday as the weekend too, unbelievable. One of the most impressive two-day periods I can remember from any wrestler. And it started off on Friday night at CMLL's 92 Anniversario show, where he faced Mistico in a title versus mask match that really has to be seen to fully comprehend the quality of this thing. But I'm going to do my best here. This was one of the purest wrestling matches of the year. By that, I mean it was completely honest in what it was trying to communicate to you. There was no irony. There was nothing done for laughs and giggles. This was a very, very pure good guy versus bad guy match in an incredible setting, what I believe is the true spiritual home of Pro Wrestling Arena Mexico. The atmosphere there, I mean, I've got to get there one day, it's on my bucket list, but the atmosphere coming through even on screen is absolutely incredible. It's this powder keg of a building. MJF comes down, he's doing an American heel act in Mexico. It's instant heat. It's instantly over. He's decked out in the red, white, and blue colors. He's got John Cruz coming down dressed as Abraham Lincoln. It's a tremendous bit. He's immediately the most hated guy in the room. He has been every time he works there, whether he's facing Mistico or Zandikan Jr., who's typically a heel, but not against MJF in Mexico. Mistico's entrance, which you may have been introduced to earlier in the year via going viral, on the complete opposite end of the scale, right? It's sung back to him every single line with this passionate bellow. It's one of the most incredible entrances of the era. And the atmosphere is immediately set. The action starts and MJF clobbers the hero before he's even ready to go. So instantly the heat's on him and he just destroys this guy. Within like a minute, Mistico bleeds one of the most impressive blade jobs. I mean, this guy's mask is just clarted. The ring is covered and splattered. It's gruesome. And it's absolutely classic pro wrestling work. The way Mistico, fakes, that's not the right word. The way Mistico conveys his wooziness, his weariness. The way he teases being counted out in this title versus mask match. The way he builds this sense of drama through an exquisite, generational, if you will, babyface performance is something else. But for me, the most impressive spot of the match, singular moment of the match, was actually something that may have been a mistake. And if it wasn't, I mean, it's absolutely genius. There's a point in this match, it's about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes in. MJF's been controlling it. He's been stamping his authority on Mistico and just building this unbelievable atmosphere in the arena. Where Mistico's on the outside and MJF, as if to say, look, you're not special. I can do your flippy stuff too, Lucha Libre guy. As if to say that in character. MJF goes for this dive, a tope, whatever. And he kind of messes it up a little bit. So his ego, his fragile wrestler ego is going, I'm flexing, I can do this stuff too. And he kind of hits the rope on the way over, and the result of this is that he still lands the dive, but he lands very awkwardly on his feet, and he almost springs into the barricade a little bit, to where it looks like he's come within like an inch of seriously hurting himself. So it looks like an error, right? Which is actually kind of genius character work if you think about it, because the whole point is that he's flexing and he's got this fragile ego, but by performing the thing like incorrectly, imperfectly, it's like, no, you're an idiot. You messed it up. What are you doing, you doofus? Even though he kind of hit it. And of course he immediately goes to like waving his pelvis around for the crowd and stuff like that, because that's his heel instinct. It feeds into who his character is completely. He's the guy who will lose a match and just pretend it never happened, or make up some grievance that doesn't exist, because that's what heels do. They always think they're in the right even when they're blatantly wrong. And in this moment, he tried to prove he was better than Mistico in that sense, and he was immediately proved wrong. He looked like an idiot, but it didn't matter because he was getting heel heat and he was immediately taunting the crowd again. I won't spoil, how the finish plays out, but by the time you probably know the result. The match is worth watching on its own. It's available on Triller if you've got the spare time and indeed the outlay for it. But one of the absolute best matches of the year for the reasons I've just described. And then, if that wasn't enough, from wrestling at 1 a.m. in Arena, Mexico, Eastern Time, he travels to Canada to wrestle Mark Briscoe about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon local time, something like that, in a tax and tables match at AEW All Out. And let me tell you, this was a beautiful thing of violence as well. Bloody too, just like the Mistico match, but done in a completely different way. This was the way plunder matches should be. Like, we're all a little bit burned out, right, on tables and thumbtacks and hardcore Extreme Rules Street Fight. All of these things, they've been done a million times over. We see about 3 of them a month, right, in the major promotions alone. And they're very, very hard to build something special in these days, because you've seen just about everything. And more often than not, these matches are just kind of spamming weapon spots. Let's get it's time to use the kendo stick. Let's get that. Oh, here's the chair. Let's do it really softly so it looks like crap. Oh, that protects people. Right? You obviously got to protect people. But the point I'm trying to make is that these things are very indulgent a lot of the time. They're very, there's not a lot of art to them sometimes. This was done completely differently in that, yes, there were big, gory, crazy spots with the thumbtacks and the tables and all of that stuff. But the way they were built to was just really well done. This wasn't a case of, haha, bell rings, let's immediately do 1,000 things with weapons. This was building to the spots with the plunder, so that when they were hit, they meant a lot more. MJF was trying to avoid getting slammed on the thumbtacks because the man, his character, is a total coward. He's a total piss baby in kayfabe. He should want to avoid these things because Mark Briscoe chose this stipulation and because he is the man in this environment. This is the kind of environment that Mark Briscoe absolutely thrives in. MJF is a fish out of water. So inevitably when Mark gets hit with the things, it doesn't mean as much to Mark because he kind of relishes this in a long way. But when MJF, after trying to cowardly avoid his way out of penance, to get his way out of it, Mark getting his own back on him, of his due punishment, when he finally gets hit with these things, it's like, yeah, screw you, dude. You're running away this whole match. You're trying to avoid these things. You can't escape much longer. And that means the eventual comeuppance as well. When he loses for the second time in 2 nights, it means so much more. It was a very well-crafted match in an era where these things are often the opposite of well-crafted and are often just weapon spam. And look, yeah, AEW does a lot of violent matches, absolutely, but this was one of those ones where it was the story within the match of MJF trying to avoid these things and eventually falling was so well done that it truly stands out. And think of the effort you have to go to stand out as a hardcore wrestling match in big 2025. It's not an easy task. And that's why I'm thinking this was one of the best, if not the best, weekend of MJF's career for a lot of reasons. Now, looking at these 2 matches as a whole, first of all, it's not often that you just see MJF losing clean, right? And he did that twice in 2 nights. That means that this meant a whole lot more. The guy is very well protected. In fact, sometimes to a fault, right? We saw in the recent Hangman match with the ref bump and the foot on the rope and Mark Briscoe coming down but not really doing anything. And there were a lot of techniques used there to where it felt like a bit of overkill to me personally. You might disagree, that's totally fine. And yet here we have these 2 matches that are almost perfectly clean, stipulations aside, of course. And it just came off so excellently. MJF went out on his back twice. He put these guys over when it mattered, in big, important matches with real stakes and real rivalries and real tangible sense of hatred between these two things. And I think what you're looking at here is actually two of the best feuds of the year in MJF now versus Mark Briscoe and MJF versus Mistico as well. It's a really tremendous bit of business across the board because, look, MJF can be a little bit consistent. I'm not a fan of the Devil. That storyline was not built to my tastes at all, and I know a lot of people were in the same boat. But the same guy who is at the heart of that can also be at the heart of these just brilliant, pure pro wrestling moments. Barely a drop of contrivances and over tropiness in these two matches. Yes, all wrestling has tropes, but you can still use them to great effect when they're deployed correctly and they're not spammed all the time. And I thought this was just a really impressive couple of days for this man. Of course, earlier in the weekend, you might argue that this was his finest moment when he told a racist person to, I'm not going to repeat what he said because YouTube doesn't like that, but tremendous bit of business on the socials as well from MJF before these matches. Then he went out and had these two. He's an absolute demon of a boy. Pretty divisive guy, right? Sometimes his stuff doesn't always land with people. And usually that's on the more elaborate side of business, right? When you have things like the Devil and things like the Hangman, the finish to the Hangman Page match quite recently as well. But I think this weekend proves that when he's properly locked into full-on wrestling and the pure core of this sport and the things that have always worked and always continue to work, good guy versus bad guy, stakes, hatred, stories within the match themselves as well as the wider feud. He's one of the absolute best. Some of the criticism that's thrown his way is often amplified when he's done something that people aren't so appreciative of, shall we say. But it just takes a weekend of this to remind what a generational talent, as the man himself would say, he really is. So, hey, just wanted to shine a whole light on MJF's weekend as a whole and the Mystical match, which I've been kind of dying to talk about, really, since it actually happened. One of my top 5 of the year. Let me know if you've seen it, what you thought of it, and let me know what you thought of the Mark Briscoe match as well. Tremendous weekend for MJF. Like a rejuvenating tonic in many ways, but he's been good all year, really. Shame about the Jeff Jarrett stuff, but that wasn't his fault, you know. That didn't play out the way anyone would have wanted, I don't think. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. I'll be back tomorrow with the news and all of that good stuff. And while you're here, check out a video full of WCW facts. It's a long one, but look at that thumbnail. ICP, baby. Best in the business? I don't know. Bye.